Also, and and like we were saying, we need those distractions, because now I want to take that left turn and talk about not only last night's vigil, but I want to look ahead and where we go from here. And I think by watching sports too, we realize with all the horrible stories we hear, and something like this is horrible, there's still so much good that goes on. And I've heard people bring back the term Toronto the Good more in this last week. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I have, and we've seen it, the kindnesses that have been done to the families of the victims. And when you talk to the families, which we had a chance to do last night, they just talk about how they've had an overwhelming sense of being comforted by people and people performing different kindnesses for them. They feel very much supported by the city, and I think it's caused people to sort of think about that whole notion of doing something for others. And that was very much a theme last night there was kind of a theme of defiance and strength from the religious leaders who spoke, but also a theme of saying, we got to look after each other, and I think both are good for the city.
How much of a life changer do you think, what happened last week? So, I mean, we immediately saw the barriers put up at Union Station. I know at Yonge Dundas Square they put up a few benches in the way so that a car couldn't mount the curb here. But how is life going to change, or do you think it's going to change much for us?
Well, I think that, we always said, like many cities would, but Toronto in particular, I think always said this could never happen here, or it's unlikely to happen here. We were getting these reports sort of saying, look, this is a big global city. It's got sort of soft targets like other places. No one would have thought necessarily that it would be something at the north of Yonge Street on a sidewalk, but we were starting to, on the advice of the security people, put soft measures in place, like some of those barriers, as you know, before when the baseball season began this year, and people noticed that. So I think it's a certain loss of innocence, maybe for the attitude that people have now about what could happen here or what can't happen here. And we're not, I certainly don't want to have the city turned into some, place that is kind of laden with huge security, because I think that's not how we want to live, and I don't think it's necessary. We'll take the advice of the officials, but I think it did change the city in terms of a loss of innocence, and in terms of us now having experienced that terrible feeling in your heart that you feel that we've seen in Paris and we've seen in other cities in the world where they had these things happen.
So what's next for those barriers? The ones at Union Station, which are temporary?
They're very temporary, and the idea, Kevin, is to find ways in which we can make sure that at those kinds of places where there are large crowds, that there is adequate security and protection, but that it's done in a Toronto way, which means you use flower pots and other kinds of things. Yeah. There are ways to do it that protect people, but at the same time are not unattractive, and we're not, I think there's no plan to overdo it. I mean, it's one of those things where we will do some things that are prudent based on the advice we receive, but make it as attractive as we can, and make it in as limited a way as we can.
And we were talking about sports too. It's nice that we did not see anybody shy away from Maple Leaf Square last week and Jurassic Park last week. It was a matter of defiant Toronto. Good.
Yeah, and even on the night of the event a week ago today, the Leafs played, and there was a great crowd down there to see the game. And I think that's the way we want it to be. I mean, we should continue. The funerals are just beginning now this week, so there's going to be another chapter to this, which is very personal to those families. And I can tell you from talking to them last night, I mean, they are, of course, heartbroken at what happened to them in different circumstances. But yeah, I mean, the sports and the city carries on, and I think if we carry on kind of mindful of what you said, which is looking after these people and being vigilant about, our surroundings, the city will be fine.
Thank you very much. And our thoughts and prayers, of course, as always, go to the family and those impacted. All right, it is 13 minutes after 7 o'clock. Let's lighten things up now a little bit. Here's Dina.